In 2008, Jim Keyes, a CEO of a major video rental business, when asked the question if he needed to change to maintain his level of success, he said this: "Neither Netflix nor Redbox are even on the radar screen in terms of competition." Fast forward 2 years, the company's bankrupt, going from 9,000 stores down to one. The company? Blockbuster. The CEO was on autopilot. And sometimes we're also guilty of being on autopilot, to the point that our minds can be closed off to change. The question today for us is our mind closed off to change? I believe that if you're ready for change, that today is a day for you, as we pick up and learn from David's experience, the 5 C's to change. And I believe that if you accept change into your life, you'll be able to renew your mind. And if you renew your mind, you'll be able to transform your life. So now, renew means to resume after an interruption or to restart. And many of you come here today hoping to resume or restart. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a career. Or maybe it's your faith in Jesus. Whatever it is today, you too will be able to promote successful change through the 5 C's. Today's source material comes from Psalm 51 that we just went through. And now, David wrote Psalm 51, and we know of David as being one of the most prominent people of the Bible, right? We know of his level of faith because David, he went on to take down this big guy named Goliath. Heard the story many times. We also know that he went on to establish the walled city of Jerusalem. We know that God called him this, a man after my own heart. Wow. But despite that, David still had his shortcomings. Despite his greatest things, he's still known for one of his greatest sin, which was adultery. Despite where you're sitting at today, folks, we're people. We fall short. I fall short. But do you know this? You are not too far gone. Whatever you've done, you too can be redeemed because he loves you. He wants to know you. So today we're going to learn how we can become better adapting to change. So let's jump in to pick up the story. 2 Samuel chapter 12 is the backstory. Now this is about a year has gone by since David has committed his sin, and David's mind is closed off. Netflix and Redbox aren't even a thing, right? And sometimes when our mind's closed off, God will find a way to get our attention. Maybe it's by force. Well, in this story, God sends a prophet named Nathan. Now, Nathan's job is to come and confront King David with a parable. The parable is about a rich man taking advantage of a poor man, and King David gets angry. But he's missing the point because he's become so callous and so insensitive that he doesn't even realize the story's about him. Now, here is Nathan calling out David in verse 7. Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says." Now listen to all the things that God has done for David. "I anointed you king over Israel. I delivered arms. I gave you all of Israel and Judah, and if this had been too little, I would have given you more. So then why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes?" In other words, has what I provided you not good enough? The life, the gifts, the protection, is that not good enough? Friends, the question for us today is what God provided us not good enough? I'm quick to say, yeah, of course, I'm blessed, but what do my actions say? I'm guilty of acceptance, of doing what needed to be done to have others liked by me. I've worn certain types of clothes, drove certain types of vehicles, hung around with certain types of people, all to be prominent, to be successful. I remember a time when I was so important that I didn't have time to do this or do that or talk to those people. I was really, really important. But slowly, life began to crumble for me. falling apart. I didn't know what to do, so I prayed, and I'm like, God, it seems like you're trying to get my attention. If I'm doing something wrong, will you show me? Will you convict me in a way that I will understand? Show me in the next 3 days how you want me to change. The next day, I'm walking downtown Sioux Falls. I turn the corner, and I come face to face with a person I was just talking bad about. It was like a punch to the stomach. It convicted me. And I'm like, wow. So that day, I confessed the way I've been living, how I've been acting. The first C to promote change in your life is confession. That day, I confessed my sin, and I was able to have clarity. And when you have clarity, you're able to change your perspective. Listen to what David says in verses 1 through 6. It's all the same theme. I'll read you the first verse to get a flavor. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. Blot out my transgressions. David is confessing. He's like, you got me. Guilty as charged. Confession worked for me. If it didn't, I wouldn't be here today. Not that I still deserve to be. Man, I fall short. But his confession convicted me, not of what I've done, but of who I am in him. The story goes the same for you guys. Confession creates clarity, and clarity creates perspective. When you have that, when you have confession, you'll be able to make change in your life. The first C is confession. Now, today you may be convicted by the Holy Spirit, maybe to make a change. He's planting something in your mind right now, but sometimes it's not always obvious. But the second C is just as important for different reasons. Now, the second C, you can find it right away in verse 7. It says this, cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. The second C is cleanse. Now, this is a distinct shift in David's thoughts. Did you notice? He went from saying, I'm a sinner, I've messed up, to God, cleanse me, make me different, make me whiter than snow. The word cleanse is a verb. So for those of you that made it through English class, a verb means action, right? And the word cleanse means to remove filth or to restore. So literally, David's asking God, take action in my life, remove the filth, and restore my life. And David means business. He says the word hyssop. Where have we seen that before? Now, hyssop was used in sacred purifications. It was a way that demonstrated the Israelites' faith, right? We know hyssop was present at Passover and was also there at the crucifixion. David's saying, I'm serious. I want change, and you can cleanse me. And it kind of reminds me of cleaning a house. So now, our kids, when we ask our kids to clean up, they know that there's a certain expectation, right? Now, our kids do clean up with some fruit snack bribery. One day, the boys were sleeping, and Jenna was playing on the floor, and I said, Jenna, it's time to pick up the floor. She actually got up and began picking up without fruit snacks. It was great, until she stopped and sat back down. I'm like, Jenna, it's time to pick up. She looked around the room, and she saw the place littered with toys, too many to count. She became overwhelmed, and her eyes welled up a little bit. She said, Daddy, I can't do it. Will you help me? Our mess can feel too much, to the point where we will sometimes just sit in our mess, say, I made my bed, might as well lay in it. We justify our behavior because we feel like it's too much to take. But, judges on this earth convict us of a wrongdoing. But you know that we have a different judge? Our judge, God, convicts by restoring. He cares more about you and your eternity than he cares about what you just did. And he wants to cleanse you. And David knew that he couldn't do it alone. He's tried to do it on his own, and man, did he fail. We can't do it alone either. And if we ask for help, just like how Jenna asked me for help, man, think of the ground we can cover. Think of how our life can be changed. The second C is cleanse. Now, to introduce the third C, I want to share a study that was done by the Harvard Business Review. It was a change in business survey, all right? They surveyed over 500,000 U.S. workers, and they found that 1/3 of those workers didn't know why change was taking place in their business. And that's because of a lack of the third C, which is communication. Communication is important in any relationship. Now, listen to how David is longing for communication. This is in verses 8 through 11. He said, "Let me hear joy and gladness. Hide your face from my sin. Do not cast me from your presence." This is David saying, Lord, I want to communicate. I want to be close to you. I remember a business trip when Jacob was 4, and I was going to be gone nearly a week. And for a 4-year-old, a week is kind of a tough concept to grasp. Before I left, he gave me kind of a half see you later type hug, And I told him, Jacob, take care of your mom and to be the man of the house. Great advice for a 4-year-old. But after 4 days, our schedules finally aligned for a phone call. I hear him pick up the phone and his voice is trembling and he says, Daddy, I don't want to be the man of the house. Jacob wanted to communicate. He was separated from his father. And that's how we can feel when we do wrong and we're too ashamed to go to our father. Man, it hurts. It hurts not to hear his voice. And that's what David is saying in this. I want to hear you, Lord. I miss you. Communication is extremely important. If you communicate your desire for change, he will. The way that David said it in verse 10, we sang it in our song today. It said, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit in me. The truth is, where your heart is, your actions will follow. If you truly want change, God will give you the willingness, the desire to make it. He'll give you the willingness and desire to follow through on that change. And when you hear his voice better, through that communication, you'll be able to better implement that. Because when you renew your mind, you can transform your life. The third C is communication. Now, in any relationship, we know that communication is important, but has anyone here ever been in a one-sided relationship? You know, where one side doesn't really follow through, doesn't really want to change, stays where they are. All the wives are looking at their husbands right now. But seriously, if you've ever been in a one-sided relationship, you know the importance of the fourth C, which is collaboration. In the verses 12 through 13, you can hear David wanting to collaborate. Listen to the contrast. Restore your joy, and I will teach transgressors your way. Deliver me from guilt, and my tongue will sign of your righteousness. David wants to collaborate. David wants a new life. He experienced just a terrible failure. Not only did he commit adultery, but he tried to cover it up. And there was murder that happened as a result of it. He messed up, guys. David was desperately wanting a change in direction. Who here has ever been on a trip before, been traveling, and gotten lost? Nobody. That's great. Very honest this morning. Great. Yes. Well, actually, yeah, my son Jacob has. We were at a big water park, and he decided to go on autopilot and gotten lost, except he didn't know his father could see him from this elevated part of the park, and he was panicking. Tears, the whole thing. It was a scene, and Jacob was looking around frantically, but he realized already that he was lost. He reached out to a person with an orange shirt, knowing that they would help him. You see, Jacob knew his destination already. He wanted to find me, right? But when you go and ask someone for help, are you asking for the destination? No. You're asking for directions. He knows that those people could help him to get to where he needed to go. It's amazing that when we change our focus on rather than where we're going to go, but how we're going to get there, it changes things. Because your direction determines your destination. Your direction determines your destination. If you are a captain in an ocean, big vessel, right? If you're off by 1 degree, it can take you off course by hundreds of miles. Hundreds. Are you off course this morning? Have you been living things your own way? Have you been on autopilot? Collaboration allows for us to incorporate change. Maybe it's time we have a new direction in our life. You're going to recognize this. Proverbs chapter 3, I know you know this one. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will make your paths. He will make your path straight. The first word in that was trust. Trust is extremely important. Now imagine you go someplace and ask for directions, and you get good directions, rare to find these days, even before smartphones. How likely are you to go back to that same place for directions? Pretty good, right? You see, it builds trust. That's what collaboration's about. When you have an opportunity to work together and see God work through your life and see successes, that builds trust. That is what collaboration is built on. So today we've talked about confession, cleanse, communicate, collaborate, but if we don't do the fifth C, man, change isn't going to work out. I remember when I first got my smartphone, most of my nights looked like this. Jacob was trying to tell me a story one night. Daddy, listen to my story. I am listening, buddy, I am listening. No, Daddy, listen to my story, and I am listening. Go ahead and tell it. Soon, 5 little fingers appeared. Daddy, look at me with your eyes. Jacob wanted the fifth C, which was commitment. David says in verse 17, my sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit. A sacrifice. A broken spirit, David was saying, Lord, you've crushed the way that I've been living. I want to be brand new. I want to follow you. He gave up his way of arrogance and his lifestyle. Jacob was asking me to give up my phone. In today's topic of change, what is God asking you to give up today? Ralph Waldo Emerson, he has famously said, your actions speak so loudly, I can't even hear the words that you say. It's not enough to say we're going to change. We must take action. It wasn't just the sacrifice of the phone that Jacob wanted. He wanted a commitment of my eyes. He wanted to see action take place. The king before David, King Saul, got himself into a little bit of trouble. He defeated this group called the Amalekites, and he took all the plunder for himself like a pirate, right? But God told him to burn it. And so Saul's like, okay, you're right. It's all good. You're right, I'm wrong. We'll do a burnt offering. All will be good. But that's when God sent word through the prophet Samuel that said this, to obey is better than to sacrifice. To commit means to obey. It's not just the sacrifice, it's the intent of your sacrifice. It's about accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. It's about putting your old ways to death. We must change. And that's what David is doing in the psalm because he realized, I can't do it alone, and neither can we. When we accept Jesus Christ as our Savior and follow him, we're literally putting our old ways to death. Literally. Galatians 2:20 said it best. You'll recognize this. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. David was ready for change. He needed to be. And so do we. The CEO was on autopilot. David was on autopilot. Jacob was on autopilot. But you know what he found? When Jacob when he saw me, I wasn't even mad because I was so sad that he was sad. And I got down on one knee and I put my arms out like this. Man, those tears changed to laughter and smiling right away. He ran to me. He gave me the biggest hug he's ever given me. That's what God's waiting for with you. Run to him. He loves you. He wants the best for you. How long are we going to stay on autopilot? A day? A week? Guys, I'm telling you, some people have been on autopilot for a decade. How much are you willing to leave behind? If you incorporate the 5 C's in your life, you can make change. You can follow God. You can run into his arms. We learned that confession creates clarity. We talked about cleansing, how he will clean us because we can't do it ourselves. Communicate builds strong relationships. Collaborate to create trust and commitment to follow through. And when you do those 5 C's, you will be able to incorporate change into your life successfully with open arms. You will find that you'll be able to renew your minds, and in the process, you will be able to transform your life.